Greetings, everyone. Nathan Nerdarchy here from Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds, hanging out with a nerd.
Nerdarchy is Ted.
Jinkies, it's time for Hooked on Adventures with Scooby Doo.
Jump down in the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy, the newsletter, get weekly gaming tips, as well as learn how to game with Nerdarchy.
All right, so we have a GM 911 from Ray Ray.
Now, we're going to put the email that we received down in the description below so you can see exactly what they requested. And if you have a GM 911, you can send this over to us at nerdarchy@gmail.com.
And basically, they would like some help. They kind of want to do a Scooby Doo mystery style in their game.
Right. So I think first we would need to break down exactly what that kind of means.
Yes, the science of Scooby Doo mysteries.
Or at least how to take that style and put that into a more D&D-esque kind of format or setting.
So as I remember Scooby Doo from my childhood, we always have a story background premise for why it could be considered a mystery and actually a supernatural or strange occurrence or monsters or aliens or whatever.
But in a more D&D-esque kind of feel, the party wanders into an area. They just happen to be right at the right location. And you come upon somebody who needs help. A quest giver, if you will.
Yes.
And they're like, oh no, something has happened.
Yeah, this person went missing, or there's been some strange stuff happening at the mill, the abandoned mill. But there's usually some premise for why it could be the spooky stuff and not just some guy in a suit or some guy doing, prestidigitation. And that's usually going to be in the form of a legend or very strange rumors or a new thing happening because of this Scooby Doo villain. Maybe he's abducting people that find out the secret, so people are mysteriously disappearing around this area. And that area used to be like an old goblin mine, and it's been abandoned by goblins for a really long time now, but there's noises late at night when people walk by it on the way from the town to another village or something.
But whatever method you're using, it's always going to be a situation where something appears outside the norm of your typical everyday life. So therefore, people begin to suspect, well, clearly if it could be something fantastic, it probably is. Now, this is given in a modern setting of Scooby Doo. Now we take that and lift that concept and put it into a world where magic literally exists.
And it's just absolutely assumed it's whatever it appears to be.
It's much more likely like, well, it's clearly a dragon, a zombie, a vampire, a ghoul, a ghost, whatever, a mummy.
A hag cursing people in the woods.
So, in this particular situation, he wants to have... Ray wants to have this situation where he runs this game and it's going to be low level. He wants to kind of spook his players and say, oh, well, you're going to have to go, they're going to come like, oh, well, we're going to have to go up against this scary monster. And out of game, the players might be thinking, well, we don't have the capacity to deal with this. We can't take on vampires and mummies, and it might even be, too strong of an opponent to be a ghoul, let alone, any of these other things. All right, so as things begin to unfold into this adventure, they have to meet the people that are around town. Now, this is typically done so that they can gather the evidence to find out whether there's any air of truth to said mystery, but also to uncover, well, where do you start? But by doing so, this lines up meeting the people in town so that once you get to that aha moment, oh my God, it's Mr. Jenkins. Well, you've met Mr. Jenkins.
Yeah, and Mr. Jenkins also had either some compelling reason to be totally disinterested in where the place is, because he's faking being disinterested, or he has a relevant reason for desiring the place or desiring something about it, an artifact, the just occupation of the land, or whatever the case, and he wants to capitalize on that. But he wants to either show disinterest or kind of like divert the player characters from figuring out that he's the man behind it.
Now, I would be very careful when you have those conversations that, I don't know how your group is going to roll, but some people might want to, oh, well, can I insight this guy? You don't want to give anything away that's going to give this away, because then you're gonna break from that aha moment because they beat to the punch. They got there too early.
And for that, I would suggest not the person's not going to outright lie. That's the first thing, because you want to be able to confuse any insight. So if they are outwardly grumpy, then that could be something that is dealing with they're just under stress from a situation, and maybe somebody, like, someone's been killing his goats, or he just his wife just passed away like a year ago, and that could possibly be a reason why he's heading down this path of whatever he's doing. But there's outward appearance and how the person's acting that is not going to just be a flip of whatever it is. So the more gray area and confusion someone could get from an insight roll, I'd rather go with that and be like, well, it doesn't matter what you rolled, you're kind of not sure just because either the person's conflicted about what they're doing, or there's a conflict point that's not just black and white.
I wouldn't say it doesn't matter what you roll. The insight is not going to point to any clues that are going to allow them to jump over the investigation, is what I would say.
That's a good point.
So that actually leads us into the actual investigation. They go and they explore, whether it be the town, the mine, the farm, wherever things are going awry. And this is where I would want to deviate from the typical norm of a Scooby Doo situation, because I'm very much against splitting the party. I wouldn't want to encourage anyone to go down those roads, even during a non-combat situation, just because of how difficult table management can be when your players are all together, let alone, well, I want to do this, well, I want to do that. All right, well, how do we bounce back and forth? What's the proper time to give to each player?
Another part that's hard about it is kind of like an out-of-game reason on not splitting the party, is it's hard to not metagame that what's going on with the other group, because you're being entertained by finding out what's going on with them, but then you're trying to be like, all right, my character doesn't know this, and my character doesn't know to associate certain things based on what the other group's discovering. So rather than, if you're going to still split the party, it's almost like you've got to split the physical people playing the party and be like, all right, guys, go over there and play a card game while I'm talking with these people for a half hour. And then it's just like, it's just everybody could have an hour of fun.
Half hour? That's enough time to get a game of Ascension in.
There you go. Sorry. All right, Ascension. Good game. So you could say maybe that's the type of game night you have, where it's not like we play D&D and that's all we play. If you have that ability to say, hey, go off and do some kind of card game for a half hour while I'm talking with these two. Or, but my issue with that is you could all have an hour of playtime instead of a half hour for half of you and a half hour for another half of you. So I agree with Ted for not splitting the party, but if you have a small group and everyone's just chill anyway, and you just want to, you're like, if someone metagames, who really cares? Then, you split them up. If there's 3 of them, just split them all up. And it's going to be scarier until they know that it's a fake. Like if I was in a haunted house and I thought there was really a vampire, because I'm in a fantasy world where there's actual vampires, I'd be like, we're in trouble, and maybe somebody falls through the floor into the basement, and then you're stuck trying to figure out, well, I don't even know where the stairs to go down to the basement are. So you've got to explore this part of the house without the understanding that the guy's just faking being a vampire. You're like, am I going to be a vampire thrall? Right. What's going to happen to me?
So another possible deviation that you could do from the typical thing is, unless you want to run a more Lord of the Rings, you don't fight the situations. It's, solving and uncovering and running away from bad guys. This whole thematic concept doesn't have combat. You don't get into the real gist of mechanics of D&D. So you could have your townsfolk be possessed of some abilities. He's acquired some minions to do some base level services. So here you would be able to insert, during the investigation processes, some small time minions for them to actually physically overcome. But you can avoid that step if you want to be more true to the source material. And, oh my God, villain makes an appearance, I'm terrified, I run away because I'm not fighting a vampire as a 3rd level character. And, once there's been enough hijinks and silliness that ensues with hidden passageways, secret doors, movable walls, whatever you want to do. Traps, 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 of course. You eventually get to the point where you get to the reveal, you pull off the mask, you dispel the illusion. However it is that you're uncovering what the bad guy is, you get to the aha, it's Mr. Jenkins.
All right, so there's one issue left to discuss. Now, normally in Scooby Doo style thing, you've got, they capture Old Man Jenkins. They capture the vampire in some way that is non-violent or non-lethal.
Drop a net on, or some
some kind of drawbridge cage, something like that. And or maybe like there's a holy water fountain. They're like, this is really convenient. Let's just fill this room up with holy water, close both the doors, and then you find out that Mr. Jenkins can't swim or something comical like that. He's like, oh, help me! And you find out, well, vampire wouldn't be screaming help. He'd be like burning into little pieces if he was in a vat of holy water. So. And the issue is D&D is like a high escalation game. You go from not fighting to whipping swords out and killing things.
So
normally
that leads the question of, well, how do you do that? So you need to, number one, if players have already taken the bait on this, I know a lot of this is going to sound like, oh, well, this is just a typical D&D adventure. But if you've gotten this far, most people, I think, are going to kind of see a connection. But if you've got players that are new, it's like, well, I'm trying to go against this vampire. I am a veteran player. I don't think I can take a vampire. How can we stop them? So you convince the players to look for a creative solution. And lo and behold, you put a creative solution or multiple in there that they might be able to use. Like, hey, there's a fishing net that's there, or there's already a trap that's not sprung that will allow a capture, and there's put a reasoning for why that's there, whether it be they're trying to stop adventurers from coming in, but perhaps you could persuade the thing to chase you and get caught in said trap.
Or in the case of people disappearing, this is where the people are actually kept. And it's found that the vampire is putting them there. So instead, you in fact make it a trap for the vampire. And if you do that, and let's say it's on the top of the tower or something, or the top outside, exposed to outside, so it's like going to be dawn soon. You trap the vampire, and you're like, all right, vampire, you got to do what you say, or you're going to burn to death in the sunlight. And it's like, well, it's going to be revealed very shortly that
he's not a
vampire, and you haven't killed him on accident.
So setting up several of these possible options that the players could uncover or reveal will, in fact, reveal that this thing is not, in fact, the monster that everyone thought it was. And, perhaps even a perception check, to say, well, that's actually looks more like a mask. Or you could even ignore, if you can't think of anything specific to do, you could get into combat, and whoever has the highest passive perception, you wouldn't even need to make them make a roll. Just tell them, like, look, that doesn't look right. You actually think that dude's wearing a mask. So you could actually subvert the whole combat if you don't think your players are...
And like a last ditch. Because hopefully you've given them clues that are leading them to the conclusion that this isn't a real vampire or something weird. Something fishy is going on here.
Right. So if your players are not the ones to be creative and you want them to actually uncover this in a very much more Scooby Doo way, you could just... Here's the reveal, and... when you guys draw out your swords to slaughter them, it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa! I'm not monster, because nobody wants to die for their illusions. Nobody wants to die for some silly little prank or game or whatever. And I would absolutely throw in their line, and I would have gotten away with it if it weren't for you. Yeah, it has to be done, and it would totally sell the point of this is your Scooby Doo adventure.
So let us know what you think about that in the comments below. While you're at it, like, share, and subscribe.
You can check us out over on nerdarchy.com.
So until next time,
stay nerdy.